Welcome to Travel Market Life, your companion for industry insights and professional business development. Travel Market Life. Join us by webcast, video or podcast.
Well, hello and welcome back to Travel Market Life. I'm your host, Ryan Haynes, and are you in for a special treat today? Because we have a double-headed interview. We have Jaz Amar from Accor and Andy Headington from Adido talking about marketing in travel. But of course, we still have our panellists as part of our monthly review trend shows. We have Claire, Will and James. And as part of this marketing theme for today, I wanted to dive in first to say, where are you a sucker when it comes to marketing? What is there any particular sort of like recent campaigns, brands that you get really sucked in by?
So I'll tell you the brand that gets not just me, but my family all the time, Lego. It just keeps reinventing itself and it appeals to all the generations. Even I'm doing Lego now in my house. So I'm doing the old 18 plus Star Wars Lego, which my daughter bought me. My middle daughter will do all the Harry Potter Lego, and my youngest daughter's on kind of the Lego friend stuff as well. So Lego, I just think it's a really clever brand that keeps reinventing itself. It appeals to the masses and it just keeps challenging the norm. It keeps getting cleverer and cleverer. So, and they do obviously very clever stuff with franchises and films and themes. So yeah, Lego's the brand that I'm suckered into all the time.
I mean, we're all influenced by so many different channels nowadays, and I just love the stories that keep coming out across Instagram nowadays. I just feel that I'm really sucked in by a lot of ways that they're trying to market to us, and I just love the illustrative content that we're getting. I mean, for me, that's one of my channels that I get sucked in by, and then I end up going onto the websites and just buying stuff, and I don't even know who I'm buying from anymore. I'll be honest with you. I don't even know if even it's a brand. I'm just sucked in by imagery and video. Will?
You're like a marketer's dream. I mean, I'm still getting over the fact that James is doing 18 plus Lego. I don't believe that for a minute, but I agree on Lego. It's an absolutely brilliant product and well marketed. I'm going to keep it a bit closer to home. I actually love, and it might be controversial, but the marketing that Ryanair do. Multimodal. Michael O'Leary is very clever in terms of how he presents himself, how he puts messages out. Oh, you'll never see another 1999 deal again. Next week, they launch a 1999 deal. It gets the attention. It's got a captive audience. It's growing a captive audience, and he's been incredibly successful. And love him or hate him, he's very successful at what he does.
I'm quite an emotional consumer, so I hark back to the sort of the 80s days when we used to have these amazing stories in the ads on telly. So I actually used to quite enjoy the ad breaks on telly. Now like everyone, I'll fast forward through them because there's so much that we're consuming. So I need something that gets to me emotionally. Maybe there's a story there, and we'll see you get involved, you believe in what you're doing. So I agree, people like Lego, and there's an emotional connection there. I was a massive Lego fan as a child, and you're right, they keep reinventing themselves. But I think there's so much out there that has to tell a story and it has to connect with me emotionally.
It's funny, that terrestrial TV thing, I watch a lot of that. It's a lot of like charity adverts and save this dog adverts nowadays. You're not actually selling anything. But let's move over to marketing, shall we? Because, as a marketeer myself, I'm always interested in looking at how that is evolving, the new developments in the space, but particularly, the impact it's having on travel and consumers. But first, let's bring in our first guest, Jaz Amar from Accor. Thanks ever so much for joining us today. So, I mean, it's a big
Pleasure.
beast, isn't it, marketing today?
Yeah, I mean, where do we even start? I really just want to pick up on your point, Claire, that you just mentioned about memorability. It's something I speak about a lot in the business. And actually, if you've seen, I think ITV have released a report. It's 70 years to the week, I think it was, where the first TV ad aired. So they released a report of the best TV ads of the last 70 years. And what is really interesting is I do this poll sometimes when I speak, where I put loads of ads out and I ask people to kind of pick their favorite ones. And most of the time, the top 4, top 5 are all from the 80s and 90s. You hardly see ads after the kind of noughties that are picked as kind of memorable. I think the Cadbury's Gorilla was one. There's some of the John Lewis ones which are memorable. But you're talking, I mean, if I'm talking childhood, you're talking the kind of the Tango ads, the Milky Bar, race, the
blend.
gold blend. Yeah. And maybe it's our age.
Hamlet as well.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe it's our age, but they were memorable. And that's the big thing. You know, I think marketing could be a lot more memorable. If I had to just pick on one thing, there's a lot of things we could speak about, Ryan.
I say the biggest challenges there, you know, I mean, I think one of the things that I've particularly seen is that there is a lot, obviously, just buying advertising space, doing the commercials. You didn't have any data. You just had to put it out there. Nowadays, there's a much more ROI impact from a marketer's perspective. And I always get being asked, well, what's the ROI? What are you going to generate? What data are you going to be looking at? Is that where you're constantly fighting against the machine commercially when you're sort of driving out these travel marketing campaigns? Or are there other things that are really sort of perhaps the bigger hurdles to get to that point?
It's a good point, actually. I mean, I do believe a lot of people, a lot of brands are addicted to short-termism. They're addicted to quick wins. I mean, Google has been absolutely brilliant at giving small brands a platform to be seen. But what it kind of has also done is just create this kind of addiction to measuring everything and having everything now. You know, so that absolutely is one challenge, this issue with short-termism. But I just want to touch upon the point I made just now, which is memorability. I think for me, there are two big challenges in marketing. One is that I just don't think ads are memorable enough. And we're talking travel. So I would say that a lot of travel advertising is too functional, is too focused on promoting rational benefits. So if I would just elaborate on that, if anyone's read Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, you'll know that the majority of our thinking as humans is emotional. So then why is most advertising, and most travel advertising, but advertising in general, stuck in the rational zone, promoting price, variety, destination, service? These are all rational benefits. And it's funny because from inside the industry, we see our brands. If I'm working for a travel company, we see our brands as truly different. We think we have better service, we have more destinations, and we're competitively priced. But actually, because we're so looking forward, what we don't realize is that they're sitting back. And what they see when they're looking at different brands is a collection of travel companies that all look pretty alike and sell things that are very similar. And that's not unique to travel. That's across absolutely everything. So that's one thing. I just think memorability is an issue. The second one is more foundational and it's more marketing orientated. And that's just about getting the fundamentals right. I think it's something that I speak about as head of strategy at Accor. I speak about that the majority of my time when I'm speaking to clients. And when I'm talking about getting the fundamentals right, it sounds boring, it sounds obvious, but I really just mean three things, which is, are you balancing your long-term brand building with your short-term performance marketing, equally balancing? Do you have a clear targeting strategy? And by that, I don't mean like your Google lines or your social media lines. I'm talking about as a brand, do you have a map of your market and are you aware of the segments that you are and are not targeting? And then lastly is the one I really hope we speak about a bit more today, and I love speaking about it, which is our position as a brand to those targets clear, and is it different and both distinctive?
Right, so that does bring us on to our next question.
I haven't seen questions
almost
in
like I gave them
advance.
to you already. So how do you differentiate? Because, I mean, that's the whole thing, right? You just mentioned that, oh, well, you got this many products, or you cater to this country, or you provide, you know, these sort of packages to this kind of demographic. Is that good enough today?
Right. So let's kind of take a step back. So old school differentiation, and when I say old school, I mean the ones I learned 20 years ago at university, 30 years ago maybe, was about a USP, a unique selling point. Okay. That's quite rare now, I think, because a lot of travel brands all sell things that are quite similar. A lot of brands sell things that are quite similar. So generally at this point, I'm asked, you know, what can I do? And you ask me that question, which is, what do you actually do? And I generally point it back down to two things. One is, if you have something truly different, then use it. So let me elaborate. So I was fortunate enough to be invited onto Royal Caribbean's Star of the Seas ship 2 months ago. Fantastic ship, absolutely beautiful. And on the second day, you kind of woke up and I looked outside the window and I could see what was a private island, and it was a theme park. Royal Caribbean call this Perfect Day at Coco Cay. I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but it's their own private island. They bought an island in the Bahamas and they turned it into a theme park, and they market that as their own thing. That's differentiation. We have an island, they don't have an island. However, that's quite rare. It's not everyone can do that. So not every cruise line can have a private island. Okay. So the second point is not necessarily about being different, but about being distinctive. I think you need to change the conversation here. Okay. So it's not about differentiating. It's knowing that if you are truly different, focus on it, but otherwise be distinctive. So let me explain to you what I mean by being distinctive. If I was to say to you, there is a short-haul airline, a short-haul low-cost carrier airline that is very similar to another short-haul low-cost carrier airline, but that's orange. Would you know who I'm talking about? Right. If I said to you, there's a market-leading travel brand that is very much like another market-leading travel brand, but it's really associated with a Jess Glynne song, you'd know who I'm talking about. Exactly. You'd know that, Ryan. Or even a kind of newish like cruise ship into the industry that's very well known for its kind of rock star treatment and is generally painted in red. Like, you'd know who I'm talking about. So all those three examples I gave have nothing to do with the product itself. They are all what you call non-brand cues, and they're distinctive assets. And that is almost like the easier and the quicker win for brands, is to be associated with something that's got nothing to do with your brand, but that you can own in your category. Okay.
It's fascinating because I work a lot with hotels, and back 10 years ago, it's like, well, we have rooms.
Yeah.
They have rooms.
Yeah.
And they look at our rooms. But it's taken a while for them to figure out actually it's what lies beneath or on top of that. It's layered on top of it. It's a service. It's the people. And you need people who can see those stories, who can identify what's distinctive, surely, because it's difficult internally to see the wood for the tree sometimes.
It absolutely is. And I think I said it just now, like brands are so inward focused, and it's fair because they work in that business. But I think us as an agency, our role and where people get a lot of value from working with us is that we take this like wider market zoomed out approach to say, this is the world. This is what your brand looks like, but this is what your brand looks like alongside the 5 other ones in your category. And then that's sometimes when you look at it and you think, oh, actually, it is quite similar. What can we do that's different?
What are the challenges, though, for brands in terms of appealing to different generations? And you think about how people are consuming adverts. We talk about Instagram, we talk about, TikTok, whatever it may be. Presumably, the way the younger generation, to me, sees a brand is probably different to me in terms of buying habits. And yet, that brand is probably trying to appeal to both demographics. How does that kind of sit from a branding perspective?
Do you mean when you're trying to appeal to different generations?
Yeah, when you're trying to appeal to different generations. You talked about, the red ship, the red brand.
Yeah.
That probably is multi-generational, but how does a brand approach that when it is trying to appeal to different people?
I suppose if I go back to my original point, it's about knowing your market and knowing that you can't ever appeal to everyone. You will be focused and you'll be targeting a specific set of the market. So what a lot of these brands do that have distinctive assets and that are well recalled is they've done a map of the market and they've said, right, we are going after these people. So let's take Virgin Voyages, for example. It's very clear in my head who they're going after. They're going after people like me, tired parents with young kids that maybe want to go on holiday without the kids. And they call it a kid-free holiday. They don't call it the adult-only cruise ship. They call it a kid-free holiday. They've actually got a really interesting video online that they did in America that is about interviewing parents and kids about going on holiday without their kids. And the kids get really upset, but their parents are like, I need this. So it's, I think it's just about understanding who you are going after and knowing that you can't actually appeal to everyone.
Well, there's a lot more for us to unpack here, but let's bring in our next guest, Andy Headington from Adido. Now, you are more of a digital specialist, but really need to play into a lot of the conversation that Jaz has been exploring here in relation to brand marketing. Firstly, what are some of the things that you're picking up from what Jaz has already said?
Well, I think going back to the point you just mentioned about hotels, how do you distinguish? Look at something like Citizen M or Moxie, like those are hotels which have been designed for a particular audience or lifestyle. And going back to the point about measurability, like you go in there and there's just an atmosphere and a ambience that you like. And if you're trying to measure that on a spreadsheet, it'd be very, very hard. But when you've been to one of those places, you're instantly aware of what it's going to be like when you go to the other ones. And that's distinctively placing it amongst this competitor set. And I think, and also back to your point there about demographics, that doesn't necessarily have to apply to age groups. It's just sort of psychographics. Like if I like working with other people around me, that's a buzzy place. I'm probably going to go there, whether I'm 55 or 25. I think sometimes we get hung up on labels of, well, if you're 34 and you're a millennial, you must be on Instagram the whole time. Well, there are people who are 85 who are on Instagram the whole time. They don't have to be a millennial necessarily. It's just if you like technology and if you like finding out stuff. So I think sometimes we get quite pigeonholed either with the audiences we're trying to go after or the channels we use, when sometimes I think we need to be thinking about, back to perhaps what Jaz has said about like audience and distinctiveness and markets.
I mean, one of the points we said at the beginning was the fact that, we've moved from sort of like just brand and visibility now into sort of identifying what the data is saying. This is really, the part of marketing where a lot of focus is given on what you do in digital. You've got that data there available. What is there anything changing there in what that sort of data is actually telling you, or how reliable that is on the end result of ROI, and how that then feeds into the wider, as the balancing the brand aspect with digital?
I think because when digital came along, it was measurable. We've then slightly become obsessed with it over the last 2 decades because I can count every click and every impression. But over the last 20 odd years, those numbers have become less and less robust, less and less accurate, to the point now where in 2025, 1 in 3 people are supposedly using an ad blocker. We have the cookie banners on every website, thanks to GDPR, which can lose anything between 20 and, I've seen worst case, like 60, 80% of traffic. We have Apple on a constant mission trying to hide attribution because of privacy, which also, by the way, is a big kick in the legs to Meta and Google, some of the biggest competitors. And I think we're now in a point where we've had all the measurability. Those numbers are getting more and more skewed and blurred. And I guess if I'm very optimistic, if we can't measure the ads quite so well, how are we going to stand out in the market if I can't count every line? Well, let's try and be really creative. Let's try and stand out. Let's be memorable. Let's have a distinct position like our friends at Ryanair. So we're at a point now where measurability is getting harder, but there's also something we have to bear in mind, which is we were always looking at a version of the truth with our analytics online because of all the historical issues we had about how it mechanically worked. So I think we are entering a world where it's going to be certainly a lot harder to measure stuff, particularly with the changes Google are doing around organic traffic and LLM usage, whereby we don't know if anyone came to our website. We know they got shown, perhaps, if we've got the right tools. Even those tools are not robust. So we're going to be looking at our website traffic and going, I don't know if that's quite accurate or not. I don't know if anyone's coming from my social media, if they've seen it, because an impression is something like half a second to 1.5 seconds, depending on the platform. So if I'm just flicking casually, that's an impression. Did I actually see it? Was it memorable? I think hopefully by having less data, which I think we will, we actually can go to a bit more, what does this feel right for us? Are we proud of the creative we're putting out there and the things we're doing? Because digital marketing is not going back to what it was because there's too many powers at play to control it.
Absolutely fascinating there. It sounds, as you say, we've gone from everything being exposed, seeing everything, to now being everyone fully dressed and having to figure out what lies beneath.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to some data, though, you have some fascinating insights that I particularly saw through an article that actually identify, even across the UK alone, that travellers are looking for different things. Can you talk us through some of the data that and research that you've done through Adido recently?
So, well, it's not recently, but it goes back 3 years or so. So post-COVID, obviously, everyone came back into the market, thankfully, and we've seen most clients, I think, get back to near 2019 levels. I've been studying how people are searching on Google for that time and produce a quarterly report on our website, which looks at 1,000+ different search phrases across a number of different industries, and trying to then plot how people have been searching differently and what trends there may be, which if I'm a established travel brand, could I use any of this to try and forward plan? So the big ones of the last couple of years are cruise. Since COVID's finished in the nicest possible sense, cruise has just gone through the roof, both in terms of people booking, number of ships, but also just searches online are just constantly up. It's just mind-boggling. Every quarter, I think it's got a plateau now. No, people are now switching from ocean to river, and river's had a fantastic year of searches. Places like Albania in the last 12 months have come from relative obscurity, I would say, to being a very hot spot. Why is that? Because of people like Dua Lipa, because of influencers going on there and saying how great it is. Also driven partly because of the economy, where people have less budget. They still want to go to a glamorous location or a nice beach, but it's 1/3 of or 2/3 of the price. So things like that. But this summer, I was looking at Lates. There was a lot of talk end of last year that Lates was going to have to be massive because people didn't have as much money, interest rate increases, etc. Now, obviously, the data I'm looking at is just the search behavior, not actually bookings. But we saw a slight drop across the board in Lates in terms of searches this summer versus last summer. which I don't know if that's necessarily reflecting actual reality, but it's a bit disappointing that if ever said one was going to be late, so it was going to be big, didn't necessarily transpire. So I'm trying to use some of these things as a proxy for my clients, for the market, for other people to, base some decisions on in the future, and hopefully they can.
And these insights, is it being affected now by the AI search and what's coming out? Or do you sort of get the same level of visibility?
Currently, Google still reports data in the same way. Currently, Google is still Google as it has been for the last 20 years. Next year, if we have this thing called AI mode, I don't know if anyone here has played with it. I saw a piece this morning that said about 3.5% of people in the UK are using AI mode currently, but the people who've used it after a week are using it less, which is very interesting in terms of what does that mean for Google. So if they make AI mode the default, then obviously it won't be best holiday villa in Spain. It's going to be, I'm going on holiday in Spain. I'd like to go for a villa with 4 people. Next year, one of us is disabled. Where's the best villa to look at? And it's going to be a completely different way for us to search, collect our data, try and interpret it. And to my point before, Google's taking more and more control. We're going to have less visibility. It's going to be, here's my website. I've matched you to some of these people. You have seen some conversions. I think that's the world we're going to be in. So the data is going to get very obscure.
Interesting. I think there's quite a few questions that I've certainly want to explore a bit more here. But if I bring you, loop you back in now, Jaz. I mean, there's a lot of data there clearly that Andy's looking at and insights as to where consumers are searching. How then, when you're starting to piece together this brand story and positioning, do you get also additional data and insights from what plays into those foundational developments of a campaign and position?
I suppose the first thing to understand is when we plan and we're planning a campaign, the first thing that we try and understand is the journey, the consumer journey that someone goes from living, looking to booking, and make sure that as a brand, you're equally across all 3 of those touch points. I know it sounds boring, but it's absolutely critical. I mean, if you read How Brands Grow by Byron Sharp, you'll know that a brand grows by targeting its light and non-buyers. So basically people that have either never bought with you or bought with you once. And they're generally the 95% of people that are not in market. And I think that's quite an interesting stat, is knowing that the majority of people at any given time are not in market. So actually, you need to make sure that you're factoring that into your media mix. And actually, you're looking at channels that are targeting people just when they're on their daily life. Not always when they're in market. I think there is a bit of an infatuation in that. So it's understanding that you need a balanced mix when you're factoring the beginnings of a campaign, Ryan, knowing that you're equally at the top and you're promoting your kind of emotional messages on your long-term brand building channels alongside your kind of more shorter-term rational messages on your performance channels. But it's about balance, that, because actually one thing I did want to share here was that Google and Meta take about 60p of every pound spent in the UK on advertising. That's a lot. So, and that's changing every year. So actually having a balanced mix is so important now.
I was seeing some data from one of my partners, Sendine, who did a performance index, and they found that media spend is up 20 to 40%, but AI through Performance Max is also reducing that cost by 19%. But obviously using AI to better target more accurately the type of buyer that you're going for. And obviously we've got all these sort of tools now available for us, and a digital agency. How are you looking at incorporating that to be more specific in targeting or be part of that media mix where you're trying to get visibility where it's not necessarily leading to conversion?
I mean, it's hard because most people, I guess to Jaz's point, are spending their money on the end of the funnel. Once I've made my decision to get my villa holiday in Spain, that's where the budget goes, that's where the attention goes. That's why costs are going up, because everyone is fighting in the same place. Trying to convince clients to take a step back or think longer term or bigger picture is increasingly hard, because they're getting pressure from the board to go, our sales are down this quarter, why is that? Well, I need to spend more money on PPC because it's the instant fix, and I'm going to, I can't afford to invest in brand as lovely as I'd like to. So that's the real challenge, I think. It's trying to get people to take a step back and spread their budget around. But there's no doubt things like social media have a huge influence on where people are going. I mentioned Albania. That's partly driven, I think, through the TikTok generation, if I can call it that, or users who see this and their friends are sharing it out. So I think you have to think about creative content, sharing it on the channels that you think are important, where your audience are more likely to be. Like for a lot of our clients, TikTok isn't that audience. They don't use it. And then trying to measure as much as we can. I'm not sure if that answered the question or not. Just trying to spread your media around is not everyone is on Google. Increasingly, probably won't be in future.
And if we were to put aside the digital, the online marketing presence and look at where the world's come post-COVID, more people are now commuting back into London, that return to the office vibe. Has there been a boom in that outdoor marketing spend? You know, Tube's right by here, BA's littered across the entire Tube with their out of office campaign. Is that now seeing more and more spend being re-put into that area?
Do you know what's really interesting is that the IPA release a report called Making Sense every year. It's the yearly kind of like media consumption report where it explains how different people are consuming channels. And what we have seen is over the years is this convergence, I would call it, where you have a lot of these traditional channels like out of home TV and audio that are digitizing their products. So connected TV on TV, digital out of home, and digital audio. Okay, so these traditional channels are digitizing their products. And actually, if you look at ad spend, those are the three channels that are seeing the highest year-on-year growth. Okay. At the same time, you have digital channels that were predominantly about narrow targeting that are starting to change their narrative and talk more broadly. Google and Meta are doing that. They're like, go broader. I mean, YouTube last month, I think it is, YouTube started becoming Barb registered. So they are now registered on the same measurement platform as traditional TV channels. So that's a certain decision that they've made there. So it's almost like you have traditional channels digitizing products. So they have the trust and the benefits of signaling, but you can actually be digital on it. But then you have the digital products that are being more broader. So it's interesting, but it's good. It's what they both needed to do, to be honest. It makes our decision harder as planners, but it's better for the brand, you know?
I mean, we already talked as well. I mean, if you're going across all channels, there's a need to resonate with the audience you're trying to connect with. And there's that role that emotions play. Baby, hold my hand. You know, we used to love that song and now we detest it. You know, it's perhaps worked against them. How do you sort of strike that balance and go, okay, you know, when's enough, or you know, how do you try to look at being able to really connect with people on that deeper level?
Do you know what? It's interesting. You talk about, is it enough? I want to talk about consistency for a second, because there's a guy called Andrew Tyndall who works for System 1. He is massive on LinkedIn. He did a piece around compounded creativity recently. And his finding was that we're obsessed with changing ads before they get old. Apart from maybe social media, where you can reach frequency, I'm going to talk planner speak for a second, where you can reach saturation and frequency quite quickly. You remove social media. Generally, we don't need to change ads. And the most memorable brands that you've all spoken about today are ones that have probably kept the advertising the same, consistent, not over years, but decades. You know, continuity absolutely matters. And you're talking about connecting with people. The one thing I would say is don't chase the novelty. Don't chase the novelty. Short-term thinking and kind of repetition is what builds brands.
Can I just add something to that, though? Because one of the things that I hear a lot of, and I'm not a marketeer, is this whole ethical side of the brands. So that consumer behavior apparently is being driven more and more by their connection with the brand values. So whilst I completely agree with you, consistency, and again, I go back to the emotional links to that.
Absolutely.
Are you seeing a shift, though, because of this change in kind of like the perception of the value, you know, the values and the ethics behind the brand?
I think, back to your point, Will, you asked earlier about different audiences. What we have seen is that younger consumers, if I'm going to talk about age for a second, younger consumers generally care more about ethics and values and brands, and they want to align more with where a brand stands. Whereas the older you get, the more functional the reason becomes, and it becomes less important. So in answer to your question, Claire, in short, yes, probably. But if you can tailor messaging to a specific subgroup, do that. Because about trying to sound crass, I sometimes wonder how much people actually do care, especially when it comes down to, would you rather align with a brand with X values, or would you rather pay less, especially when money comes into it?
I think just to that point, a shameless book time, but I've written a book about digital marketing for travel brands. There you go, put it in there. It took
a while,
minutes,
I was going to see how long
minutes.
it took me to say that.
But in there, I've referenced this thing called the say-do gap, which is basically you interview people on the street and they'll say, oh yeah, I really care about the environment. I do as much as I can. By the way, did you know Amazon and Temu are the biggest places where people spend all their time and money? It's really They're probably not, they're just fast fashion, whatever. And there was some research done by Kantar at the ABTA marketing conference, I think this summer, where they looked at people by age, and they basically said, how important is the environment to you? And Jaz was right, the older audience, I think they rated 14th or 13th out of 15 things, and the younger audience was like second or third. But that said, what they say and what they mean and what they intend is often very different to what they can afford, and the reality of making that happen. And there's this whole talk about carbon visibility through flights and things, which has never really come to pass. I think there's a lot that people say that they want, but unfortunately we're not either offering it, or they're not able to afford it, or a bit of both, or, a bit of apathy, sadly.
PR, darling.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately, when it does come to a lot of the sustainability, eco-credential side of things, it just feels like it's just a label that they're putting on rather than actual action. All these buying trees. How many trees are there left to buy?
Well, exactly.
It doesn't make any sense to me. Will?
I was going to say, I'm interested. Crystal ball time. If you're looking ahead 5-10 years, we've spoken a lot on this podcast about the effect of AI, and I think we all agree it's here, it's coming, it's going to develop. But if you're planning, well, not even if you're planning a strategy, but over the next 5 years, how important is that going to be, and how dominant is that going to be, especially on the digital side of things, do you think?
I mean, if I had the crystal ball, it could tell me that I wouldn't be sat here. But I think there's going to be a whole swathe of people who go all in on AI, and they do everything through their favorite chatbot, and Google and Instagram is all gone. And in OpenAI's world, they're launching a video platform. They're linking integrations with payments. They're linking integrations with products. So the whole announcement of Expedia and Booking.com this week, they could be a version of the world, but some people are just in that the whole time. And to get to them will be quite expensive, quite problematic, quite hard. There's a strategic question, I guess, that some people may be asking Jaz or others of going, well, do I even need to play in this world? If I'm a premium luxury brand, maybe you do the direct line thing and you go, sod it. If you want to talk to us about our incredible holidays that you can't access anywhere else, you ought to come to us on our website or in our brands or whatever. So I think there's a strategic decision, number one. Number two, I think just watching user behavior is the most important thing. And off the back of that, what the heck does Google do? Because I have this argument with people a lot. Doesn't really care what ChatGPT do when 90% of all searches currently go through Google. And I've been saying on stage for a decade, don't use Google. We're creating a monopoly that's forcing everyone into the same bucket, and we're all getting our prices squeezed. Use Bing, use DuckDuckGo, use some other one. Oh, that's good. Do they do anything? No.
I'm a recent convert to DuckDuck, actually.
Really?
If Google decides to change the game, which they are, then that's the big thing that we need to worry about, not what all these peripheral things which cause all the noise are.
I mean,
that's my view.
Perplexity, ChatGPT, they're not Google owned, are they?
Well, they have funding from Microsoft and others. So it's a little bit of, sheep's clothing or whatever.
But it's almost like you're taking people away from Google search if you're going to be on one of those channels, which I do find absolutely fascinating.
Can I just touch upon Will's comment as well? It's sample of one, but it's really interesting around Google and AI and search when you talk to younger kids. And I'm talking about my niece who's 15, because she is Google what? Google what?
Yeah.
Search is, and actually it's not even AI, it's social media. Yeah. Search goes straight into social. And actually, if you look at some of TikTok's recent campaigns, they are quite actively going after search. The most recent TV ads are all about, this is your place to discover. So in essence, you probably will know more than I do, Andy, I wonder if the Google's competition in the future is more social media than it is AI, because that's where a lot of them are going.
But if we're talking about that people have phones with no apps and everything will be driven by an AI, I think we spoke on a previous podcast where, you want to get from A to B, you don't go on the Uber app, you just ask to book something to go from A to B. Then actually it won't matter, because the behavior will be changed for the most people. Yeah. And it's brands getting sort of lined for that. I mean, my belief is probably similar to Andy's. I think there's huge opportunity, especially in hospitality, for direct bookings. I think we'll see that. It will be interesting to see how the OTAs fit into that world and what they do. But yeah, I wonder what it's going to look like, because of the very tools that we have in our hands, which is our phones, will intrinsically change.
Yeah. That's the OpenAI dream, what you've described, as you do everything through one app.
Damn it, I've given them the idea. I wish I could.
Well, no, because they've nicked it from China, and in China you have two apps. I think WeChat and maybe one other, And you can bank, you can buy your house, you can order a food, you can order whatever, all through that one app. I think in the Western world, maybe more particularly in Britain, like we don't like the idea of that. We want to be moaning about something or other not working and the friction. And I think, some people will be all in that world. Some people will be on TikTok. Some people will be across everything. It's going to be interesting. It makes marketing harder, but also makes marketing, for me as a practitioner, slightly more interesting.
Yeah. But picking up on that, what you were saying about searching on social media, for me, there's an issue of trust there. Right. So you hear about all the sort of, God, I don't want to say the word fake news, but that whole sort of, the stuff that's out there and that, people can be influenced in the wrong way by false information or across social media. So for me, therefore, why would I want to search on something thinking I'm not going to get the right results? Because it's going to be what they want to tell me, not what it actually is. And I guess it was maybe more of an opinion and a comment than a question.
No, it's an interesting point because actually we don't, but they do. And when I say they, the younger generation might be able to see that better than what we will, what's fake, what isn't. They have a different filter. They're digital natives. They've been brought up with digital media. I mean, it's weird. Sometimes I watch my son like playing Roblox or Fortnite and that's gaming. I know we're digressing slightly, but they are this person. They are them and they are in this world and they want money to buy clothes for themselves in this world. And that's kind of how that works. Kind of Ready Player One-ish a bit, but it's you have to really study that group. And I know they're, Gen Alpha, whatever they're called, they're still 10, 15, 20 years away, but they do look at things very different to us. We don't trust it. You're right. Social media is generally quite low trusted compared to traditional media, but it's different when you're talking to that group.
And also, even if I look at my children to that point, I've got, she's nearly 4, my youngest, but she'll happily talk to Alexa and tell Alexa what to do and add stuff to the shopping list and stuff like that because we get surprises each week that she's ordered more chocolate or whatever.
Yeah.
But she knows how to put on, music and she does all of that and she's 4. So it's already ingrained at such an early age, this adaptation to what the future's already going to be like.
Yeah, I mean, my nephew makes money off Vinted all the time. And the stuff he buys, and he's one of these people who will buy it, repackage it and sell it again. And he's only 14. I'm like, no, that's an entrepreneur. Yeah. And it's also being able to, I think, spot when what product you're going to get is going to be low quality as well. I mean, Temu they're not so good with, but certainly I've seen it. I've gone up on the website and they go, no, that you don't want to be buying from them, sort of thing. And I'm like, oh, how do you spot that before I have? Yeah. And I'm a marketeer, So it's interesting, I guess, as well. As you say, there is that element of we've always bought from each other, but we're just not buying that way so much. We're not buying in the same way because it's all done digitally. We're connected by each other digitally. We're connected to each other through video games, through social media, and that's the way we're buying through one another.
I guess a sort of follow-up to my question back to the crystal ball, probably for Jaz, but does that put more emphasis on the brand and potentially the brand legacy, or do you think it's open season in terms of if it does shift more to AI? Does it go back to what you spoke about at the very start where price becomes front and center and everything else? Or will, the brand integrity, the brand value actually be important and that kind of legacy be important?
It goes back to what I said at the beginning, but those 3 fundamental points. It's do you balance your performance and your brand building? So are you trying to get people in market and out of market? Do you have a clear targeting strategy and do you have a clear position? Like these fundamental. It's like having a shop, for example. So you've got a shop, right? And before you sort the shop out and the layout of everything and making sure that people can access you easily and you've got all products, you open the doors and you let people in. You haven't sorted that out first. Like you have to do that. And that's so overlooked with a lot of brands. I spoke about ads not being memorable, but take 2 or 3 steps back about, get the house in order and actually make sure that you are, easily recalled, you have distinctive assets, you have a clear positioning, you have a clear targeting strategy. And once you have that, then you can start looking at actually, is the future going to be, tech? So do I need to basically put more effort around digitizing my product?
It's interesting because, I mean, it makes you think of a local wine bar by us. They opened up just after the pandemic.
Just drive you to alcohol.
Yeah. We've gone off travel a bit, haven't we?
They opened up as a deli with all fancy produce. And then about 6 or 9 months later, they introduced a barista machine. And so they started selling coffee. Then people were spending all their time in there having coffee, but they were still trying to sell and push these deli products on them. And then month after month, less and less products were on the shelves. More and more seating was then in there. Then they realized they were doing charcuterie boards, and they had the meats and cheeses from the deli, but they weren't selling anything from the deli, but they were selling all these boards. So then they introduced wine evenings, and the wine evenings went from one night to 2 nights to every night.
What people want.
It doesn't sell coffee anymore. It's no longer a deli. It's a wine bar. It doesn't even do charcuterie boards. So if they'd done the research to begin with, they would have known that locally there's a lot of yummy mummies who want to drink wine and leave their kids at home at 7:30 in the evening because that's the way it is.
Absolutely.
So yeah, get what is your product? Who are you selling it for? Is there demand for it?
Yeah.
And then from that point on, building that positioning, that presence, and that brand narrative.
The position's really important. Like we overlook that. And it's not the position you think you have. It's you ask people, what space do we hold in your head? And is that the space we want you to hold in your head? These are all really key strategic points you need to ask yourself before you even get into the weeds of tactics. You know that.
I think that also has to be driven by the board and or the owner, whoever it is, because marketing needs to sort of, follow that lead, and we need to have confidence that this is our position and we're going to hold it for the next 3 to 5 years and build on it, because going back to something we talked about earlier on, that short-termism of we need to hit our traveller numbers for the next 12 months or next 3 months just knocks all of that over, and you don't have that longer term of what we're building here, which is the whole Ryanair thing. Michael can do that, I guess, because he's been there from day one. But when you get a lot of investors coming in, like, they don't give a shit about that, really. They just want to get numbers and flip it in 3 years' time. So that's quite the hard tension, I think, that a lot of marketing people face, sadly.
Yeah.
Excellent. So much there for you all to take away and have a think about with your own businesses, and also the changing dynamics of marketing, especially with new technologies and AI. But nothing changing immediately, so please don't be too worried. We'll definitely explore more to do with AI in the future. But thank you ever so much to our guests, Jaz Amar from Accor.
Thank you.
And Andy Headington from Adido. And also Will, James and Claire for your contributions. Don't forget, check out more of our episodes coming up and subscribe to our newsletter. I've been your host, Ryan Haynes. Speak to you soon.
For more, go to Travel Market Life. The music sensation by Zach Nelson is reproduced under license from Storyblocks. Travel Market Life is a Haynes Marcoms digital marketing agency production, serving the travel and technology industries.